Tomorrow is a big day for America, and naturally for the world. Many U.S. citizens have already voted, and many more will, as the country faces the big decision. Who will be the man to lead the free world for the next 4 years? Donald Trump or Joe Biden? If Israelis were voting, the outcome would be definitive. In a recent poll held by I-24 News, 63% of Israelis said Trump would be a better president for Israel. Only 18.8% said the same about Biden. Trump also represents a big divide in the American Jewish community. Whereas most of American-born Jews living in the United States do not support Trump, the majority of Israeli-born Jews living in the States do. So is Trump good for the Jews? Is he good for Israel? And what will happen if Joe Biden wins tomorrow? To discuss all of this and much more, we are joined by Oren Nahari. We hosted Oren on the podcast almost 4 years ago to discuss Trump after 30 days in office. Oren is a legendary Israeli foreign correspondent, an author, a sci-fi geek, and apparently an avid cat person.
Well, yes. Pixel is my alter ego.
Okay. So we are thrilled to have you on the show today. Thank you so much for joining us. How are you?
I'm fine. And yourself?
Great.
Doing good.
Take
We're
the
kind of
mic
anxious.
a bit, the microphone, take it closer to you. Okay.
Yes, did.
Kind of anxious for the big day tomorrow. So can you, I know you're going to be reluctant to do this, but right off the bat, can you give us your prediction?
Jorgensen, will he win?
Sorry? She.
Okay. She's a she?
Joe Jorgensen.
I thought she's a he.
No.
Will she win?
That's how little everybody knows about
Not
her.
Jorgensen and not Green, no. The Libertarians and the Greens will not win it.
Damn it.
Nor Kanye West and the rest of them. I think, and I'll put my life here on the line, I think it'll be Biden. And if I have to choose between a Trump win and a Biden landslide, I'll take the second.
Really?
So I think that Biden will win. First of all, I'm putting my hand in fire. I think he'll win a majority in the plural vote. I think he'll do better than Hillary Clinton. I think that it'll be something like 4 or 5 million people will vote more for Biden than for Trump. Now, the Electoral College, that's a different matter. I still think that he'll win, but it can...
And you think that there's a higher chance that he'll win by a landslide?
Then Trump win. Yes, I think that Biden will win by, let's say, 300 electors, more or less. But I think that it will be more of a chance of Biden 350, 360 than Trump winning the 270, 280.
Okay.
Because I think that...
so he won't win by 300. You're saying that that Biden will win with 300
yes,
votes?
Yes. No, not
I was like, that would...
No.
I don't even know if that's
almost
possible.
can be done.
Yeah.
But I think that there is a good chance that he'll take the 3 northern states, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, take them back, and either Florida or North Carolina or Arizona, or 2 of them, not to mention Texas. It could happen too, but with a lesser...
Even though they surrounded Biden's bus and kicked him out of the state?
Yes, and they will do it. Look, now there's a different matter. We can come tomorrow to a day when we will see in various states, we'll see right-wing militias protecting the president, protecting the Constitution, protecting their way of life, protecting, the Second Amendment, etc., coming there with their rifles, with their tattoos, and basically intimidating voters. It can come, of course, to the all those scenarios of Pennsylvania and then to the Supreme Court. And this can really create not only chaos, but also a very real constitutional crisis in the United States. I think that come January, who will be sworn in, tens of millions of Americans, millions, tens of millions, will believe wholeheartedly, will know that the man in the White House that was just sworn in is illegitimate. Not only, we have to change the people, not only the people made a mistake, not only that, how can it happen, they stole our country, that this person stole the elections. That
If Trump wins or
No,
if anybody
if Biden
wins.
wins,
I think that it can happen either way. I think that if Biden wins, there will be the Trump supporters, the extreme of the extreme, the QAnons, etc., who will say these elections were stolen. The president said that if it is done by mail, it will be a fraud, etc., etc. But I also think that if Biden loses, many of his supporters will wholeheartedly believe that it was stolen from them by Republican governors, by the post office headed by a Trump loyalist, by the Supreme Court, etc., etc. And we do remember that we are talking about a country who murdered 4 presidents, and every other person gets a huge arsenal of weapons. It can go very, very wrong very, very quickly.
So basically what you're saying is no matter who wins tomorrow, nobody wins.
No, I'm saying that somebody will win. I think that the best outcome for America will be that somebody wins decisively. That it cannot come to the Supreme Court, and if it comes, the Supreme Court will, in clear conscience, will kick it out. If it is Florida scenario 2000 all over again, and it comes to a Supreme Court, and I remind you, and our listeners remember it, that it was a Supreme Court that all the Republican nominated judges voted to halt the count in Florida and basically gave the election to George Bush. And all the Democrat nominated judges voted for a recount. So I don't know if America can afford another 2020 years with the country much, much more divided than it was.
Although if it reaches the Supreme Court today, the outcome will probably look very different since you have, 5 now?
No, we
with
are talking 6. Because
6.
Amy Barrett will rule come this election result. The Democrats argue that she should recuse herself. I don't think that she will. But again, it will be 6 Republican nominated judges, let's say 5, let's put Roberts aside, but still it will basically, 1/3 of the Supreme Court was nominated by Trump. 1/3. And if a 1/3 of the Supreme Court nominated by Trump basically rules in favor of Trump, many people will see it as a fixed game.
But do you really believe, because you said the extreme of the extreme, I mean, but then you also said tens of millions of Americans.
Millions will believe it, yes.
So do you think that tens of millions are on the extreme, or only the extreme will lead it and tens of millions will believe?
54% of the Republican Party voters say that if they have a choice between what scientists and doctors says about corona or what the president say, they'll go with the president. And they do. So, and we'll see that 95-96% of the Republican voters are wholeheartedly Trumpists, so to say. I'm not saying that all of them will go to the extreme. I'm saying that enough of the people, out of the millions who believe QAnon, of the millions who believe in other conspiracy theory, those who listen, and I'm sorry, I know that I'm talking in cliches and I'm talking in stigmas, but those who echo chamber, Mark Levin and some others, and Glenn Beck, and they believe that Trump is the force of light against the forces of darkness, against Satanists, against pedophiles, etc., etc. And some of them, it doesn't have to be a lot, will say we have to do something to save America. The other day we saw 10 people, something like that, of right-wing militia who wanted to abduct the governor of Michigan and try her for treason of the people because of actions she took against coronavirus. So if you do it for a governor of Michigan, what do you do to a president that you wholeheartedly believe that is going to take the country and surrender it to the forces of evil?
But you know, I mean, the same sentiment, it feels like, exists on the other end of the aisle. And you have a lot of violence around the U.S. already, which is taking place.
I said it.
So I wonder...
that I think that Biden supporters, some of them,
Yeah.
will wholeheartedly believe that how can it be for the second time in a row that all the scenarios were for Biden winning, and he led by 7% here and 8% there and 9% there. And then suddenly Trump wins unless some dark forces are behind. America is addicted to conspiracy theories.
We already saw that in round one, right? With the whole Russian involvement in the election and the collusion and the ideas of collusion. So
wait, I gotta ask, because Trump is right about one thing, for sure, in my opinion. He is running against one of the worst candidates, I feel. And you cannot compare, like, Trump's campaign is amazing. He knows how to campaign.
Like strategically, tactically.
And the nominee, it's a good nominee to work with because he's very charismatic. He is working his butt off. And against him is a very weak candidate. So if he loses to this candidate, do you agree that it's
Trump
embarrassing?
Is charismatic. No way of denying it. But you have to remember that the elections in the United States, by the way, like elections in Israel, it is not really Trump versus Biden as it is not really Netanyahu versus Gantz. It's pro-Trump and anti-Trump, like it's pro-Bibi and anti-Bibi. You either admire him or you hate his guts. No in between. You have no gray ground. You know that, well, I think about Trump is, he's okay, I guess. No such thing. You either adore him or you hate him. And now, what he's doing strategically, I don't know. Whether strategically you want to insult states that you visit, you know, the only the other day he said, why am I here at all? You know, what am I doing here? Etc. etc. I shouldn't be here. I don't like being here. He's got one thing working for him, and I think that we'll see it again. The Republicans are extremely good in big data, in the groundwork, not so much in the social networks there too, but in getting to the last voter in the last county. And they pin their hopes.
That's the most important thing in elections.
Yeah, in a way, yes. And they pin their hopes on that out of the Trump base, which is basically whites without higher education, 30% of the voters, that many of them did not vote in Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and they still won them 4 years ago, that now, if they can bring all of them to the polls tomorrow, they will win, although Biden leads. And of course, Trump is fantastic, he's charismatic to his supporters.
Yeah.
But again, he as much as he brings adoration, almost you could say, he brings also loathing and hate. So, you know, it's the other side. Biden is middle of the road. And many in America, I think, I know, and you know it too, want normalcy. Want, after the 4 years of total chaos in America, you know, something more tranquil, let's say, for the time being. And again, you can argue that how come that after the last year of the corona, more than 40% of the country votes for Trump. And no matter who's against him. And we know the system. We know that in many states, it doesn't matter in Alabama whether it'll be on the Republican card Donald Trump or Oren Nahari, they'll vote red. It doesn't matter in California where it says Joe Biden or Oren Nahari, they'll vote blue. So again, we are talking 10, maybe 8 or 7 states. That's where it will be decided.
And yet you think Biden will win, but how come? Because you trust the polls? Like, why is it that you believe that he's going to take
Because after all, we have to trust something. And I think that the polls are the best way. And yes, I do remember 2016, but still, it was within the margin of error. The point is that the margin of error was, and still is, 4.5%, and came election day, in all the states, it fell on one side. So it's like, when you play backgammon and you need a double six, so it was a double six. It happens 1 in 30 times, but it happened then. It can happen again. And we remember the Brexit and we remember 2016, but still, let's say in 2018 and in many other elections afterwards, the pollsters had it right on the nose. And it's basically all of them. And we don't see, I don't see at the moment something, a red light that says, okay, here it can go the other way. There are some who say...
Aren't there polls like Rasmussen where Trump is still within the margin of error?
He is. Yeah. He is in many places. He is within the margin of error. There are states, important states, Florida is one.
But Pennsylvania, no. I think in Pennsylvania he's not in the margin of error.
He's not in the margin of error. So he can be, again, he can lose Pennsylvania and win some others. It can happen. But the percentage is very, very small unless again, there are things happening tomorrow. Unless tomorrow we can see suppression of votes. It happened in America before. It can happen again. We can see hanky-panky, and we can see, and again, you can say, and I'll agree with you, it can go both ways, but mostly in recent years, it went the Republican way. Before that, it was the Democrats. Boss Richard Daley, vote early, vote often, and he was a Democrat. And it can happen, and we can see that. And after that, we can see what happens to the ballots who arrive on mail. What will happen there in the process, and after that in the state houses and the Supreme Court eventually.
Last time you were here, I listened to the episode from 4 years ago. It was very interesting because we talked mainly about the Israeli perspective. It was 30 days, and you were so skeptical about Trump's intentions. For example, we talked about Jerusalem. Mm-hmm. You were very skeptical. Mm-hmm. We talked about Iran, and you were very skeptical mm-hmm. about the Iranian deal, and if he pulls out, how will it affect? You said it wouldn't affect much. And it was very interesting in 4 years.
Okay.
So if we look
at basically you say is that I didn't know what I was talking about. So, okay.
Who could have imagined such goodness that he threw upon us?
Okay. So okay. First of all, Trump and Netanyahu is an alliance that worked miracles for both of them. You can argue, and I will argue, that even if Trump wins tomorrow, I think it was wrong for Israel to put all its jetons on the Republicans, on the evangelists, because one day the Democrats will return. It can happen tomorrow. It can happen, in 4 years' time. But we always relied on both sides of the aisle, and we stopped it. And I think it is not wise. But Jerusalem, I fully agree. In Israel, in the last 4 years, the entire world knew that the biggest, meanest T-Rex in the world is in our corner. Amazing. Concerning Iran, you could argue that pulling the United States out of the Iran deal didn't stop Iran's ambitions and maybe even hastened them.
But it did affect them.
Their economy. The sanctions, yes, of course. But the point is, whether you want to stop the race towards nuclear arms. And it didn't stop it. And once the United States is pulling out of the Middle East and other places, if America is not the World Cup, Putin will be. There's no vacuum in the world. Now, concerning Iran, again, the man to judge it is the Prime Minister of Israel. And he wanted it. He wanted the United States to pull out of the Iran deal, and Trump did it. So from Israel, because the government of Israel is Israel for all practical matters, it was fantastic. I don't know, I'll put it like that, I'm not sure that it was, in the long run, that it was the best thing for Israel. Perhaps I suggest that it would be better if United States have stayed in the Iran deal and put pressure from within. But again, Israel wanted it, and we'll know it only, in hindsight, which is the best debate site of all.
And he killed Soleimani.
Sorry?
He killed Soleimani.
Yes, Obama killed bin Laden. And by the way, President Trump, when you were talking about chaos, President Trump retweeted somebody who said that bin Laden was not killed, and Biden and Obama murdered a SEAL soldier to hide it that they didn't kill bin Laden. The President of the United States retweets it. Now, he said, okay, I didn't say it, I only retweeted it, but you're the president. You cannot do such things.
In bios, they write, retweet is not equal endorsement. You know this?
Yeah, but you are the president.
Yeah. Well, interesting.
So,
but
yes, he killed Soleimani. He bombed Syria once, and then pulled the forces out of Syria.
Killed al-Baghdadi.
Killed al-Baghdadi, right.
So he's got two.
He's got two.
He's got two notches on his belt.
Okay, so yes, if the president does such thing, I think that the credit goes to the CIA, the SEALs, and some others before the president, either Obama or Trump or whoever comes next. But that's beside the point. Again, we are sitting in Israel, but you have to ask yourselves, how come that this American president, and it is not every president, and it is not even every Republican president, how come that this president is liked, loved by only 2.5 countries, 3.5 countries? Israel, the Philippines,
and the Dominican Republic,
the Dominican Republic, and half of America, if I'm generous. How come? American presidents, all of them, from right to left, from John Kennedy to Ronald Reagan to Eisenhower to Bill Clinton, they are symbols all around the world, except this one.
Maybe the question is, why is he so hated? I got to tell you an anecdote. We did, once a month, we do a chit-chat episode. And we said that if there were elections, we would vote for Trump. The amount of hatred we received from listeners, and we didn't say you should vote for Trump. We didn't say you have to vote for Trump. We just said we would vote for Trump. You don't have to agree with us. But the hatred and the lynch we went through. So why do people hate him so much? Maybe that is the question.
Okay, as I said, he draws a lot of emotions. You either love him and worship him, and we see them. He's received in some places like he's Jesus incarnate, or you hate him, and there are people who draw fire like that. Not all of them. Let's say Benny Gantz doesn't, and Joe Biden doesn't. Obama did, in a way. Again, the same, some of the same hatred by Trump and some others. Now, Donald Trump, because he is who he is, because the way he talks, the way he treats people, etc., the way he boasts about things, and so he draws a lot of raw nerves, either for or against.
But when you look at his term objectively, and
no such thing. No such thing. Well, come on.
Okay, but let's say not from the Israeli perspective, but in general, and you compare him, his numbers, his achievements, the things. I don't know, to Obama, to Bush, Jr. How would you say? Where do you put him?
Okay. First of all, in the economy, I would argue that, first of all, he inherited a very, very solid base from Obama after the disaster of 2008, made by Republicans, by the way, and he built upon it. I think that the famous tax cut was best for the billionaires and not for the working class Americans, but the economy was good. He did fantastically. Concerning the corona, and it will be a major thing that if he is not elected again, this will be perhaps the major reason, he blew it. There was a famous plaque on Harry Truman's desk, which said, "The buck stops here." You're the president. If you take credit for all the good, you have to take credit. You have to take credit for the thing that went south. And the corona went south and still does. You know, every minute, as we speak, every minute an American dies. And the government, the president, makes jokes about Laura Ingraham wearing a mask in one of his mass rallies. And he's saying, okay, I'll invite 400 people to the White House to be in close circumstances for the winning party. I mean, you do not agree with science. You do not agree with your own advisors. You didn't put plans in actions that would have minimized this catastrophe. So, yes, this is a major screw up, and the blame goes to the president. Foreign policy. I think that he is right on the basis of that the United States intervened too much in the world. By the way, in this he continues Obama. That we don't have, we the Americans do not have to send armies to the entire world. We should not, as the United States did so many times, sent armies or intervened, you know, from Honduras to Guatemala, to Panama, to Cuba, to Grenada, to Mexico, to Afghanistan, to Iraq, etc., etc. But you have to get some priorities right. And if you think that the major threat for the future of the United States is China, for example, so the thing that you do not do is cancel the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership that Obama built basically against China. You know, it was it was all the countries of the Pacific, you know, free trade, except China. So, you know, it was against them. But because it was Obama, Trump canceled it. So, if you are the United States, the city on the hill, and the United States have this presumption, and it's one of the good things about it. You cannot, you don't have to agree with it, with this fine, you know, view of Americans on themselves and on their country, the greatest country on the face of the earth. But you do not begin by adoring President Xi, and then until this day, not saying a word about the Uyghur, concentration camps and treatment, etc. So Trump is not big on the.
So he wasn't tough enough with China.
Up until now, you know, you do not have to go head in head in China. He did the opposite of Teddy Roosevelt. He talked big but carried the small stick. You know, he said that he's going for a big trade war. And he said that Mexico will pay for the wall. And he said many things that didn't come too much. And in the end, America under Trump alienated many of its, many of the countries that stood by it for 70 years. You know, NATO partners, Japan, South Korea, etc. And Trump tried, and still do, to cozy to Kim in North Korea, Erdogan, by the way, in Turkey. The best relation that he has with any foreign leader are with Erdogan, Putin, etc. And so the foreign policy of the United States now is in shambles. When we say the United States leader of the free world, it was true. From 1945 to 4 years ago. I'm not sure how true it is today.
But I mean, You can't ignore the fact that the United States has a military that's 10 times the size of any other military in the world.
Sure.
That's probably
the
the
United States
size
is a
of the
superpower,
next.
of course.
So it
the
is
superpower.
It is still very much the dominant force on the globe.
Of course it is, but
Okay.
let's say that, and it is true, maybe even truer for Obama than for Trump, but still it's true for both of them. Let's say that you have, all the resources in the world, but if people believe that you will not use them, and you say that you will not use them, then basically you do not have them. And on the other hand, Russia,
you use them.
until you use them, but he doesn't. And Russia, on the other hand, is smaller in size and in capacities, in economy, 1/10 of the United States, etc., etc. But Putin is a bully who uses his force, and nobody reprimands him, so he's more respected than the United States from 2013
But
until today.
It was Obama who didn't react to Putin's
I said from
aggression
2013
okay.
until today.
Okay.
Yes. When Obama drew a line in the sand in Syria and said, if they attack one more time in chemical gases, I will react, and he didn't react, but invited Putin there. It was a huge, huge, huge mistake. By the way, I said it then and there out loud. And we see the consequences.
We pay the price.
The consequences are that Russia is now, I'm not saying the dominant force, but a power in the Middle East where it was kicked out years ago. Today, Turkey knows that if it wants to achieve something in the middle Mediterranean, in the Eastern Mediterranean, it talks with Putin. Yes, it talks with the United States as well, but it talks with Putin.
But don't you think that, at least in the Middle East, that Trump has created a situation in which, while the Iran deal led to sort of an Iranian hegemony in the Middle East, he withdrew from that and brought, some of the allies closer, ended up making, like we just saw,
the Abraham Accords.
UAE.
Yes, I don't think that Iran was a hegemon in the Middle East, even after the Iran deal, because many of the countries did not, make deals with her because the United States frowned upon it. Even Obama and then Trump, even while the deal was in power, they couldn't buy weapons unless they bought them, from the usual suppliers, etc., etc. So Iran it intervened, and still does, in places. But local powers, Turkey, Israel, others, pushed back all the time. And even Russia doesn't let Iran do all it wants in Syria from its own reasons. And of course, against Iran were the Sunni world, the scared Sunni world, and Trump was in place, and Netanyahu was in place to achieve a very important and very, very good, and I'm happy for it, these accords. Basically, they are accords that acknowledged in the open something that was there for 10, 20 years.
Economically, it's super important.
Economically, it's super important. It was there by all the time. What's happening now in the open is that the accords, the bypass of the Palestinians, and of course that they will receive modern weapons from the United States, and Israel will have to deal with it. Again, it is good, and maybe Sudan and others will be there as well. Some of it we are not supposed to say it aloud. It's pure and simple anti-Semitism. It's the protocols of elders of Zion, because all these countries believe that the way to influence Washington is through Israel and the Jews. They say that Israel controls Washington. Many people say it out loud. The Zions, you've heard the expression, yes? Controlling the United States foreign policy, etc., etc. So, again, the accords are fantastic. It's good that they are there. And Trump was instrumental in it. Of course he was. And he deserves credit for it. Of course he does. And okay,
he made peace in the Middle East, and Obama didn't, and Bush didn't. So in that sense, I think it's an interesting achievement for him, even though everything you said. But I want to ask you, so you don't agree?
Obama made peace. He just made peace with other people, right?
Who?
Iran.
Oh, well, yeah.
It was not a peace, it was a deal. It was not
Wasn't
a
it
peace
called
accord.
the joint? The name of it was
No, it was, first of all, it was by the
Joint
United
Peace
Nations.
Accords or something.
No. GNPCA, it was made by the United Nations, by the Security Council. The United States was one of the
Yeah.
co-signatories, but
So
that's not a...
You don't agree with the following sentence. China and Iran would rather have Biden in the White House than Trump.
Oh, I agree. I'm not sure about China.
Okay.
Iran would love that, but we have to remember that Iran, first of all, it's got its own elections in the summer. And it's important who will be elected
Elections
there.
is a big
And
word.
by the way, from their point of view, they say that it's the same. Because if Biden is elected, he will not return to the same Iran deal. And everybody knows it. And by the way, Trump said that if he is elected again, he'll make a deal with Iran in 30 days. We'll have to see what this presumed deal will be about and if it can be achieved. Again, I don't think that we'll see so much difference in the Middle East. I think that the next president will have so much on his hands, Corona, the economy, etc. We'll have to see, who the foreign secretary will be. And even then, there is China, there is Russia, there is the European Union. There are so many places much more important than us to the American people.
But what I do take from what you said is that in the end of the day, because foreign policy, Americans don't vote because of foreign policy usually. They vote because of economy, and this time they vote about COVID.
Not only economy and COVID, I believe up to a point, people also vote in Israel, but also in the United States, according to values and identities. Mm-hmm. Their economic identity, their gender, their sex, their beliefs, their profession. All the things that make them or anybody who they are.
Yes.
In Israel, we know that we see somebody, and from the shape of his yarmulke on his head, we can say which party, and will be right 90% of the time he votes on, if he has a yarmulke. And from others, will go and Tel Aviv, and by the look of that person, we'll know that, again, in 90, 80%. So again,
except the both of us, we're the 1%.
Okay, you're the others, but you're American-born, aren't you? Both of you.
Is.
Yeah.
I'm
Okay.
not.
So again, and in America, tell me that you're an evangelist from Kentucky, and I'll tell you who you vote for. And you are the epitome of Woody Allen from New York, and I'll tell you who you vote for. There are some who do not follow this, but the identities are important in America as well.
I read today, Nadav Eyal wrote that support among African Americans and Latinos for Trump rose in the past 4 years.
Yes.
Which is pretty amazing, I think.
Not totally. First of all, Hispanics are the major problematic point of the Republican Party, because when the Republican Party stopped being a tent party and became, in recent years, white men party, and not even white men and women party, but more white men party more and more, the Hispanics are Republicans. Many of them are believers, and they are conservative. And conservative values. Not all Hispanics, of course, are the same, because we put them under one umbrella, and there is a difference between the Cubans who escaped Castro in Florida and the Mexicans in California, etc. But again, they are religious, they are Catholics, they have family values, they are conservative. But again, that's
although Johnson was a notorious racist as well.
All of them were.
Yeah,
all of them. All the presidents. If if you look at Woodrow Wilson, he was totally racist. Roosevelt had racist, and Johnson, Nixon.
But why do you think the Republican Party is a party of white men right now? And why do you like?
Because the base of Trump at the moment, and there are white women, and there are others, and there are blacks, and there are Hispanics, and there are, ultra-Orthodox Jews. There are, of course, all of them. And there are others. There is if you will go to Silicon Valley, and you'll find Peter Thiel. And if you'll go to Hollywood, you'll find James Woods. You'll find people who vote Republican or who vote Trump, of course, in everything. But at the moment, Trump's base, solid base, are the evangelicals and the whites who don't have a college degree. They are the base. They are the base. And you would think, I would have thought, that he would try to expand, that he won with them in 2016, but he will go to the middle. He'll try to expand the base, and he didn't. And his basic plan is the same basic plan as was in 2016, and he may pull it off again. But at the moment, the Republican Party, and they are saying it, that they are bleeding with, white suburban women, and they are bleeding in other groups. They are bleeding in seniors, 65 and over, which voted Republicans most of their lives, etc. So there are weaknesses there.
Nate Benson writes in the comments, I vote for who is best for the Constitution, not who is like or not like me. Which is interesting, I think, because...
so again, the Constitution, it's important. You know what? Let's talk about the Constitution for a minute. The basic divide between the conservatives and liberals. The conservatives, the originalists, yes, like Scalia and Barrett, they say, the Constitution is the Ten Commandments. That's it. That's what's written. The liberals would say, it was written almost 250 years ago, in the days that let's talk about the so famous Second Amendment. It says something like, since the militia is important, so the right of every of the people to carry arms. It doesn't say anything about checking the background of somebody who buys a gun. It doesn't say anything about it. It was written in the day when the weapon was a musket that you had to load one at a time, not a day.
And it took
when
5 minutes.
AR-15, with 100 bullets. Not only that, when it is written, the right of the people can be the nation, and it can be individual people. How do you read it? They read it as each and every person. And militia, does it say that I am a part of the militia or you? You could read it as, a militia, fine, National Guard. We have a militia right there. This is the militia. But again, everybody interpret the Constitution. The conservatives and the liberals.
No, but the point of the Second Amendment was clearly not intended for the right of the military or the National Guard to have weapons. It was the right of everyday citizens to have weapons. That was
it said
because Thomas Jefferson but they wrote about this stuff outside of the Constitution. They made it clear that this isn't meant to
but
be.
But it's not written in the Constitution. When you say outside the Constitution, fine. I remind you, the Constitution was read and was dictated by slave owners. If you take the Constitution was the people who voted then were white males.
It wasn't totally written by slave owners. John Adams never owned slaves.
Fine. But what I mean.
Many of them owned
So
slaves.
you know what? Everything. Do either of you play poker or bridge?
Yeah.
You know poker?
I know the rules.
Something.
Yeah.
You know the rules. When you say pass, that's a declaration. Inaction is an action. If the Supreme Court decides, and he may decide in 10 days' time, something like that the Obamacare is not constitutional, Now, this is a totally political decision. Roe versus Wade is totally political. And so will be if you overturn Roe versus Wade. And you'll have fantastic constitutional reasons to do either or. Good justices ruled this way and that way. Some of them were not so good. And some of them, what happened in the 2000 was totally political decision.
Mm-hmm.
The judges interpreted the Constitution to support their political views at the time. And it happens.
Yeah, it's all in the
I don't
game.
think that, but I mean, I'm not sure. His name was Nate
Benson.
So I don't think, but that's what I'm saying is I think that it's a legitimate discussion to be had in the Supreme Court. The originalists
Of
versus
course.
the textualists versus the whatever.
I'm totally with you. But when he says, I support the Constitution, what we know from the Constitution is one thing, that come 21st of January, a president will be sworn.
Yeah.
But the path, what happens then? Does the election end on the 4th of November, our time, or does it end when the last voter is counted? What is a democracy?
When the last judge makes his decision.
Exactly. So again, we are coming, and we began this talk when I said that I fear that we'll see a tremendous wound to the American fabric in these elections.
Before we go, let's talk a little bit about COVID, because, I think history will truly judge who was right, but I feel like it's wrong to compare America to other Western countries when it comes to dealing with COVID, because America is the only country which truly has the value of freedoms. It has its freedoms above all, and some things are very hard to hurt some of these freedoms. Unlike here, for example, that they crushed all our freedoms in no time
Without blinking.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't think that you can argue that Britain is not democratic, or Scandinavia, or New Zealand, or Australia, or Canada, for example.
I didn't say they're not democratic.
Okay,
but
so in America, what I think you meant, let me put words in your mouth for a minute, is it's not the point of it's more democratic, it's more individualistic.
No, but he didn't say democratic. He said freedom.
Freedom,
Yeah.
okay.
Individual liberties.
Individual liberties. So individual liberties in times of crisis, in times of pandemia, what is more important? And nobody said that, the black choppers of the UN are coming to conquer you. There is a huge problem of how to coordinate things between the states and the federal government, etc., etc. But Donald Trump argued for many months that there's no such thing as COVID. I remind you the word hoax. I remind you that chloroquine is coming to save us all. So there is a problem.
But when you have freedoms, but when you have this freedom, it doesn't really matter what Trump says or doesn't say, because you have your choice to make.
First of all, if you're the president, you can lead, and you should lead. You're the leader.
Yes, but even if you don't lead...
Okay, so there will be some guys in Idaho who doesn't listen to you and say, okay, I'm waiting here for Judgment Day, and I do not believe in vaccines, and I do not believe in anything but God. Okay, fine, legitimate. But in other places, you have to lead in what you do in pandemia times, and you can put your signature on things, and move things forward. And he didn't do it. The only thing that was important for him was to move the economy forward, because this is his biggest achievement. So it is problematic, and yes, it is a total failure of the United States.
Maybe the economic situation in Europe and Israel is the failure, and who's
Fine.
let's see. History
Okay.
will judge. Maybe
Histo-
they will be the success story of COVID,
Yes.
and we will be the failure because we
Could
save
be.
people but kill the economy.
Okay, so first of all, America, the economy is at the moment is not great either. But the point
Everything's
is,
relative.
everything is relative. You are absolutely right. How many trillions of dollars in debts? Your grandchildren will have to pay in.
They'll live here. They'll live here.
They live here.
But
okay.
here
okay,
also
so
they'll also be in debt.
there is a crisis, and it's a total crisis. Again, it started in China, but the United States should have been more prepared as every other country. And, we can go back in history. The health system of the United States is a disgrace. It's a total disgrace. In everything. You can get, if you want the best treatment in the world, it is in the United States, sure. But the system is so inefficient and so pricey and so so ludicrous in many things. Okay, so I get your point, liberties, but still there are governors, and some of the governors, didn't do anything, and still don't.
Maybe it's a good because what do you mean but didn't do? The things that governments in Europe did are things that some of them are casus belli in some states in America, like telling people to stay at home and not work, forcing people, hurting their freedom of movement and of work, and states like California, who did do many things, people are fleeing California because of those restrictions.
Okay, so we are talking now, this is a pandemic. This is something that we haven't seen in 100 years, basically. Other countries did. So the United States is not China, or even New Zealand, or other countries. But basically, between, let's say, restrictions, Germany style or New Zealand style, and doing nothing at all, the countries that have the most death, who are they? United States, India, Brazil, Britain. What do they all have in common? Populist leaders. So, and they are not the same culture. So I think that there was a failure here. I agree with you that maybe people will say this as a casus belli. So what do you do in a pandemic? Let's say that tomorrow you'll have a COVID, but not
0.04%, but 5%.
5%, 10%. What do? We say, okay, I have civil liberties. I do not have to vaccinate. I will go to work. I will, yes, everybody will die around me. So what do? In a country that invented, the Walking Dead, etc., and all the other zombie movies.
And full of preppers who prepared all their lives to this day.
Yeah, exactly. So again, it's problematic, but I return, even if, and I agree with you, it's a totally different culture, and people value their freedoms, especially in the Midwest and the southern states, etc., and other places. Still, a word from the president and some laws, and it could have been dealt better. You know it.
I'm not sure. I mean, look, the way we're dealing with it, slowly but surely, not so slowly, actually, approaching 3,000 deaths probably in a couple of weeks, couple of months. I mean, we're not going to...
These are the examples you have? The United States and Israel?
No, the United States, Israel...
France, Italy. They kill the economy and they are screwed.
Okay, Italy started
sickness.
You know what? We are talking about, the United States versus China. Okay, so China is a dictatorship.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but
obviously, it's a dictatorship.
Do you really buy that only 5,000 people died in China? There's no way.
Okay.
You think so?
I don't know. But at the moment...
5,000 people died of corona, maybe. Maybe they exterminated everybody who even had an inkling of corona, and millions died in camps.
So let's look at other countries. Again, Eastern Asia is not the United States. There are countries, totally different society, more homogeneous, respect for the elders and the government. But, look at, the United States have so many things going for it, fighting a pandemic. You have oceans protecting you. You have borders with 2 countries. That's it. 2 countries.
Yeah, but it's 350 million people.
Yeah. So again, fantastic. They are spread in 8-9 million kilometers.
But not really. I mean, most of them are densely packed into cities and urban areas.
Yeah, but the problem was not only in the urban areas, but today in other places. So you can argue back and forth. It's not the European Union, small country, very, very dense. You're talking about Italy or France or Germany. You're talking cities, medieval cities where everybody is living,
and culture together.
And all the borders are open. And what can you do? In America, you stop flights, and that's it. And you have borders with Mexico and Canada. Then you don't have invaders coming from either one of them.
He stopped flights from China at first, and then from Europe at one point.
But too late. But yeah, everybody were late.
He did it, and it's good thing that he did. But again, it's we're talking inside the United States. I'm talking basically about the attitude that believe. Maybe you'll drink bleachers. Maybe it'll do you good. You're the president. You cannot say it because people will listen.
But those are anecdotal in the end of the day. I feel
nobody really drank bleach, and if they did, then they probably, God was coming to them.
Yes,
come on, if you're gonna drink bleach,
natural selection.
But again, natural selection. Darwin Awards.
I'm kidding.
But again,
don't drink bleach.
The point is, I think that a president should be presidential. And in times of crisis, and the pandemic is the crisis, and everybody is scared. They are scared for the health. They are scared for the economy. They are scared for their dear ones. They don't know what will happen. All of us saw too many movies, of a catastrophe coming, etc. You should be, at a time like this, the healer, not the divider.
Well, if he did all these things, though,
he wouldn't be Trump.
I think that's part of what he did. And again, I don't adore the guy, but kind of what Trump, I think his attitude was, this is just, let's go on as usual.
It's a virus.
Life goes on and whatever. So, yeah, he put a lot of misinformation out there, and he did some stupid stuff where he took off his mask around a lot of his staff, and some of his staff caught it in the end. And I agree, the way that he acted wasn't necessarily the most the most expertly advised way that you could act in time of a pandemic. But that's what's so American about it, is that you do what you do, and that's it. I mean,
okay, but
it's not the government. In his eyes, and in the Republican Party's eyes, I think it's not the president's job to deal with corona, and I think that's what.
Whose job is it?
It's a pandemic. In Americans, I think that the left and the right are very quickly.
What do you mean by going? It's a pandemic?
They're separate ways, but
okay. Let's say that tomorrow, and it happened before.
Yeah.
Let's compare it to a hurricane, to Katrina, or others. So it's not the job of the president to deal with that either.
It isn't.
It isn't. Okay, so you leave the people to die.
No, you don't.
You do not send them help.
Yeah, it's not about sending help. It's about the fact that, first of all, if anything, it's not the federal government's, it's states' problems, right?
Okay.
And then more and more local issues. But yeah, that in the end, it's not the government comes down from on high and starts handing out whatever.
But they do. That's the point. He insisted that his signature is on the checks coming to every American. The Republicans, the party of, small government, balanced budget, they are the ones who broke all the rules in 2008, and now again, spending money like there's no tomorrow. In a way, the Democrats want more, etc. But you say, okay, the Democrats are the party of big government and the handouts and liberals and what have you. So you are the president with almost monarchist powers. You have tremendous powers. You can end the world tomorrow. Send the missiles, etc. So it is in your watch. It is in your watch. And you have to take some responsibility, not for the virus, not for the pandemic, but how your country deals with it. Even in leadership alone, even be Churchillian, and say, okay, we are in hard times, we are in it together, we'll fight it, we'll get through. That's it. Without getting into specifics. But he didn't. He's Trump. He's not there. You know what?
Yeah.
Reagan would have done it, and you know it. And even George Bush, both of them, would have done it. And he can't.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's gonna be so interesting tomorrow. You're excited?
Yes, it is.
You're excited about the elections?
Yeah, I'm excited. Yes, I am excited. I think that the United States is in a crossroad. I think that future historians will look at these elections as the most consequential of the last 50 years. I think that the question will be, and nobody votes about it, but the question will be, who was the continuation of the American way and who was the deviation? Obama or Trump? Did Obama continue the American way and Trump, deviates from it? Or Obama was a liberal deviation and now America is returning to some, values of the past, etc. In a way, I think that Trump is fighting a rearguard fight for America that perhaps even didn't exist, but the way America saw America. America of Allentown, Pennsylvania, and the Alamo, etc., etc., a white America, a Protestant America, America of small towns, church on Sunday, baseball, apple pie, and all the rest of it. And that America perhaps doesn't exist anymore. But, you can win a rearguard war as well.
Amazing.
I invite you to visit Alabama. I think you'll see that America.
Peter grew up in Alabama.
Yeah, I grew up in
Really?
in the South. Yeah.
What's a nice Jewish boy doing in Alabama, of all places?
They chased me out of there with a
Yeah.
pitchfork. They
Yeah.
said, "Get that Jew out of here."
Yeah, okay. To kill a mockingbird. Fine.
Yeah. But in some places, I agree. Most of these states isn't like that anymore. Because there's, obviously people have been drawn into the cities
Sure.
over the last 50 years. But there's still some apple pies.
In Mobile? Where did you go?
No, in Birmingham.
Okay.
Birmingham, Alabama.
Oh, yeah.
Now everything makes sense.
Explains
It
everything.
does.
But the Israeli parents.
Late at night, you put the headphones on and listen to Leonard Skinner and the rest of them.
Yeah, of course. Leonard Skinner.
ZZ Top.
Yeah.
Okay.
All the good ones.
Oh, and
Okay.
thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
You're on social media. How can people hit you up?
Yes, I'm in social media. I have my page is Oren Nahari on Facebook, and of course I'm on Twitter, and that's it basically.
Instagram, TikTok.
That's it.
Okay.
There are not enough hours in the day, for do the work and. Twitter. Mostly I quarrel in Twitter and argue in Twitter, but also on.
Do you
on
give
Facebook.
Zoom lectures in English?
Oh yes.
So
I
people
do.
can reach out and invite a
Yeah.
lecture?
Of course.
Okay. So through Facebook, you have... Okay.
Yes, through Facebook. and
Facebook,
Messenger.
Twitter.
No
Perfect. Okay, before we go, we are sponsored by The Forward.
Yes.
The Forward, a very important, prominent Jewish newspaper in America. Go to forward.com/2njb to subscribe and support the podcast. And you must go there because they're great news source and they're interesting.
You must. You
should check them
Go
out.
now.
Also,
IsraelNationalNews.com, Arutz Sheva, collaboration with them. They're also a great source for kind of a window into Israel, IsraelNationalNews.com.
and in Australia, the Australian Jewish News, ajn.timesofisrael.com. Check them out also. And Chuck Isaac says, interesting conversation. Thank you, Chuck.
Thanks,
Thank
Chuck.
That is it.
Yes. Oh, but we also do this on our
yes.
free time, guys. So if you want to help us out, go to 2njb.com/donate. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Owen.
It was
Thank
a
you.
pleasure.
Bye. See you in 4 years. Bye.
Bye.